Well guys, yes, I'm back at it again. Today I'm going to be putting this micro switch on. It's a Turbo 400 kickdown. Basically you bolt it right here and that's adjustable, and this little ear needs to hit this switch when you go full throttle and that'll kick it down. And there's only two wires, one to the transmission kickdown, and then you want a wire that gets 12 volts when the ignition's on. And well, I already have one over here that I'm probably just borrow. This one was for my electric choke, and I don't have that now, and I don't know if I'm gonna swap back. So I think I'm gonna take this wire, just cut that off and loop it over there, because it gets 12 volts when the ignition's on. So that'd make that easy on me. It's pretty self-explanatory, you know, take that bolt out. So I think that's what I'm going to go ahead and do. It comes with two wires and some connectors, but somehow I lost the connectors. Don't ask me how. But it should be fairly simple. Got the kit on eBay, and the kit itself is about $40. And these switches are about $20 for a good one. And this bracket here is kind of complicated. So, you know, I just figured I'd just spend the $40 instead of having to make one, and because that'd probably come out cheaper. It depends on how much you value your time and effort, but this is made to work. So sometimes I just would rather do. I'm gonna do a little explaining. I had to pull this out because I thought this was a junky design at first, because I couldn't get it to press like it's supposed to. But here, I'll show y'all what was happening and what is supposed to happen. And I just checked this on my car, so I have a few of these Edelbrock carburetors kicking around because they're good for dual quads and stuff, but I'm gonna try and show y'all this. And see how it doesn't hit it. It's supposed. Here, I'll show y'all this. When you open it, it's supposed to come. That's full throttle. It's supposed to hit this little stop right there. This one is how mine is done. And if you look, primaries ain't even opening. On my car, not the primaries, the secondaries. But the secondaries on my car are just barely cracked. Now you take this guy right here, this is another carburetor of mine. Look at this. It hits it, and the primaries and secondaries are open. So I have a problem somewhere. For some reason, these secondaries ain't opening. So, and I looked at the rods thinking these was bent differently, and they're not. They're the exact same bend, so I gotta figure that out. Basically what's happening, these ain't the carbs off the car, these are spare. So this is how the ones on my car are acting. And this little guy right here is what actually is supposed to engage my kickdown. Alright, now look at this one. They open all the way, and it goes all the way back and it hits right there. This carb does not do that. It comes just partial up, very little movement. Oh, look at this one again. So come to find out, I took the carb off and the four barrels would open. Well, look at this. See how it doesn't return forward. But I can get the secondaries to open, but then primaries don't work right. So if I slide the carburetor around, I can get the primaries to work fine, but not the secondaries. I just pulled the carburetor off, and it actually looks like it's rubbing on the gasket because there's a ring around it. So all I should have to do is cut that out. If I can get this off without breaking it. And hopefully I'll be good to go. Bought these at a swap meet for like $1 a piece or something. I'm gonna go ahead and get them swapped out. I'll show y'all the difference in a second, but Devil must be beating his wife because it's kind of raining. So there's the gaskets I was using. See how that's kind of peeled up from the secondaries? Well, I got these at a swap meet for a couple dollars. Slide them over there. And look at how big of a difference this is. These are marked for a Holly, but they're gonna work. These were marked for a Edelbrock. I got them on my other car down there, so I'm gonna have to rip that gasket off. But the primaries are way smaller than an Edelbrock. A useful tip to make these gaskets last forever is you're gonna take a little grease and rub on both sides and put it on the car. Didn't do that last time and tore it a little bit, but that's still usable, but it's about utterly useless to me unless I cut that hole out. Got the other carburetor back on, I got that swapped out. I just need to hook the linkage back up and a few other the plumbings and stuff, but you know, it ain't nothing. I got it cranked back up and it's already running better, I think. Well, it's a different day, but I took it for a test drive, and the kickdown works, but when you go full throttle, it kind of cuts in and out like it's starving for fuel. And I'm pretty sure I already checked the floats, and that should be set about right. And I'm thinking I need to get a better fuel pump, so I went ahead and got one of those on order, because a stock Pontiac fuel pump is 40 gallons per hour at 6 psi, and with an Edelbrock carburetor you want about 6 psi max, or it'll leak into the needle and seat. So I got the next best thing, which was 80 gallons per hour at 6 psi. So I will get that hooked in here when I get it, but right now, for the time being, I have an AFR gauge. So I got this AFR gauge, the Hugo. I bought it off Amazon for $100. They had the AEM one. A lot of people was complaining about the O2 sensor on those, which these are the same exact gauge, I'm pretty sure, because I've seen them both say each and or, but this ought to be the same exact gauge, because it looks just like it, just don't say AEM, and the whole kit looks the same. They got a face that's black and white, and then this little ring right here that screws on. You can get it in silver, which it come with all that, but I think this looks the best. But it's pretty simple. Basically, you got two prongs here in this O2 sensor and this two harnesses. So this harness, you click in right here, and it wires to the fuse box. So you've got your black, which is your ground, and your red, which is the power. And I'm gonna wire in a fusible link behind that, and it's gotta get about 12 volts with the key on. The other two wires, I forget what the white one's for and the blue one. One of them's for like I forget what it's called, but analog, you know, keeps all the data. And another one I can't remember, but these two are just optional, and I don't need that because this is not an ECU controlled car. But anyways, this one goes to that big prong, and all it does is run to the O2 sensor. It's pretty simple and straightforward. And I might end up buying another one, since on a Mickey Thompson cross ram, the gauges, the plenums on the intake are not connected. So I might could get a different reading, and to change them around I'd have to unscrew the O2 sensor, and you know, that's a lot of work when I just put two side by side and watch each other. So I'm gonna go ahead and start in on that. Well, I went ahead and stuck the O2 sensor in. I have to loop the wire around and zip tie it to something to keep it out of my flex plate, because I don't have a dust cover yet. I bought one, and as it turns out, the starter on small block Chevys on a different side, which I didn't think about. So I'll zip tie that away from danger, and we'll figure it out from there. And I'll go ahead and loop it in and all that. Went ahead and pulled the wire in through the hole. So I need to kind of tape these up and zip tie them wires in the way, but I haven't gotten around to doing that yet. But got that in there, and there's so much foot of that cord that I'm just gonna end up having to roll it up somewhere. Because I mean, this is about as long as a typical car these days, and I don't have a long way to go with it. So I'm gonna run it as neatly as possible, and don't mind that stuff. That's just temporarily for testing. But anyways, run that, and then what's left I'll probably just bring into the cabin and roll them together with a twisty tie or something. That way I can just easily undo it if I decide to change banks or anything. Got me a fusible link, because on the instructions it says wire the power up to a 10 amp fuse with 10 to 18 volts of power, which I am getting 12 volts, so that'll be perfect. And I'll splice this into the wiring that I already have. It's pretty simple. This one's a Yugo, which I already said. These instructions are actually better than ones up there. I don't even know why they come with it. It just comes with pretty little pictures that don't tell you nothing. Shows you your chart here. But yeah, it's probably pretty simple from here on out. Now I got this prong wired up to the power wire with the fusible link. So I gotta figure out where I'm gonna run the ground. And I have bought a new gauge pod, but the gauge is too big for it, which is weird. So I'm gonna have to figure out where I wanna mount this thing. But I'll probably just test it out for now and try and put it somewhere. Well, the gauge, as you can see where it's rubbing, will not fit into my new Equus gauge holder because it's just a hair bigger. So I'm gonna take this Dremel, run it around it once or twice, and go ahead and put it in there so I can go ahead and mount it today. Now I got it to fit, still tight getting it in there, but it will actually slide in there. This gauge I got looking at the bevel, so I kept grinding a little bit and it slid a little forward. But anyways, I don't like to drill holes in my dash, so I got this stuff called Gorilla Tape. I used alien tape on these other gauges because, you know, this dash don't have any holes in it, but they've been there for over a year now, a little over a year. And I'm going to take and mount it either right here or right here. Haven't quite decided, but I'm going to think about it for a little bit if I want it here or over there, but I'll be able to figure it out. That'll be an easy enough spot there. Got my tack there. I think I'll put it right there. Or, I'm sure some people have done this, take the clock out and put that there. But I like the clock, it looks pretty cool to me. Went ahead and just mounted it right there for the time being. If I decide to move it, I always can. Or if I get another one, I can take and move it right over there beside it. But I don't think that looks bad right there. Now I'm just wiring in my ground. I went ahead and wired it into the dimmer switch. Well, it's not really wired, but you know what I mean, it's leeching off of it. And then I'm gonna take and roll up all this wire, zip tie it and tie it together and tuck it all up under the dash because it's ugly. One thing though that I like to do before I tuck all the wiring up is make sure the gauge works. So I'm gonna crank the car up. Now the AFR is reading at 14.5, 14.2. Oh, that's bad. Just crank it up. I mean, it works some of the time and then it bottoms out. But I think maybe it's because the O2 sensor is not heated up or it's not calibrated yet. Because when I rev it up, it comes up. But I'm not sure. I'm just going to let it warm up and see what it does. Letting it warm up, now it's starting to kind of read correctly. Thing. good. I just kind of zip tied the wires together and stuffed them up under the dash where they's easy to come back down if I need to. But it looks pretty clean. I mean, you can't really tell there's a bunch of wires, so that's good. Now I'm gonna kind of clean some of this crap out of the car, let it off the jack, and I'm gonna run it out the road, put some gas in it, and cruise around and see what the AFR tells me. It's at 2,000 RPM. I'll get into it about 3 grand. About 3 grand. Still kind of cutting in and out, which could be fuel starvation and a few other things. Plugs look good though, which is strange. So I just went and put a few gallons of 93 in it just to, know it had fuel in it. I do have another idea what it could be. I might swap my lines back on my transmission. Or it could be just because it wasn't warmed up right, but we'll see when I turn around right up here. Cutting in and out some. I'm trying to figure out what that is. It's either a fuel delivery issue or something else. I'm just not sure here. But the AFR went down, which was weird. I think it did. It's hard for me to see at the angle, but could be getting too much fuel too. But I wouldn't think that was an issue, because this tune's for a mild small block Chevy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull in out to the house, and I'm going to swap the line around for the transmission and see if that changes anything. I just cranked it back, and now I'm at 14.1. Now it's going back down to 13, and I don't know why it's doing that. That's going back all over the place. I'm pretty sure that it's the fuel pump. I would be willing to bet. My buddy suggested that's probably the issue, and I got thinking about it, and that's just gotta be what it is. But the AFR gauge works and all that, other than being a little weird when I crank it and leave it in park, unless I just get done driving it, which some say that could be a exhaust leak, which obviously ain't happening here. A bunch of other stuff. So could just be a bad O2 sensor too. Who knows? So anyways, I'm gonna go ahead and just end it right here. I got a new fuel pump ordered that's 80 gallons per hour. This is just the stock fuel pump that's 40 gallons per hour. So here shortly we will see, whenever I get that, if it makes any of a difference. Y'all have a good one, and don't forget to like and subscribe.